Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H Event Space. You are tuned into the final installation of The Joy of the Journey, hosted by Sony, with our wonderful dear friend, Mr. Chris Orwig. I will let him introduce his guest, but she should be no stranger to our audience out there. But Chris, Katrine, welcome.
Thank you, Derek. So great to be here, and especially this time of year, and to get to talk about this topic. And Katrine, so fun to have you on. And and Katrine's internet connection isn't great, so we may kind of get creative with that. But how are you doing, Katrine? First of all,
Doing great. Thank you. Looking forward to the holidays, a little peace and quiet, some hiking. I'm good.
amazing, love it. Well, as always, I have slides, so I'll jump into those slides, and then Katrine, at the end of those, I'll have a question, and that'll kind of kick off our conversation. So here we
Okay.
go. Let me just make sure I share the correct screen here, and you guys let me know if you can see my little slide deck there. Is that looking good, everyone? Thumbs up or audio, maybe? Yeah, okay.
Looks good. Yep.
Thank you, thank you. So what I wanted to do is just tune back into this idea of this series we're on, and this is the joy of the journey, and this idea that the camera, it deepens and expands our experience. In a lot of ways, it's, for me, I was thinking about it, it's like this catapult. It like just launches you forward into life into so many wonderful ways. And I'll be showing a bunch of my images, but I want to get us thinking about Katrine, our guest, and some of her work. And she sent over some images. Katrine, I included some of those, and then some of my other favorites. But I figured since we're talking from B&H, we got to at least have a New York photo in there. And I love this image. And what I love about your work is it's so full of story. This is the same image twice. I just zoomed in on it once so we could see it a little better in the landscape format. But I love the story, the simplicity, how your work takes us different places, and it can do so literally, but also figuratively, imaginatively, and how you're able to tap into both ways of seeing like that, and also, of course, geographically, and take us to different parts of the world, and how you drag your camera along to these different corners of the world, whether they're majestic or maybe they're more focused on people that you're meeting. And I love that there's a lot of psychological depth to what you do. And we'll talk about all this stuff, but I was thinking about Katrina and I are both Sony artisans, and we've had a chance to go on these Sony events. And at these events, there's always something outlandish, like in this case, a model in a helicopter. And one of the things that happens is a lot of people they'll shoot from, they'll be in a big group and they'll take pictures from a group. But what Katrine always does, and has taught me to do as well, is to walk up to the subjects, to get active, and to really become part of the process, rather than just letting talent stand there and do what they're going to do and you're kind of passively just capturing it. In other words, rather than being just one of the crowd who are just almost like paparazzi taking pictures of something, really getting involved. And I think that's a lot of what the joy of the journey is. It's this idea of getting involved with our cameras. So yes, the camera is a kind of a spacer between us and reality, but it's our job to move forward. And I love how that is been part of your work and part of your approach. Now, we'll come back to you and your work, but I wanted to also kind of go backwards into this idea of, because this is our last episode in the joy of the journey, of what this is anchored in. It's this idea that photography is celebrating life. And I've written a few books, number of different books, and photography has helped me to somehow experience life in this deep way, whether it's working with an astronaut or an elite athlete or a billionaire or a poet. It's given me a chance to meet legends that I admire, to get up close to situations and people that I wouldn't have been able to have otherwise, whether that's in the water in a pool workout with a famous athlete, or riding a helicopter in Costa Rica for a job, or just connecting with really interesting people, whether it's just a brief interaction or one that's more a friendship over the years. Like on the left, Sean and I world champion surfer. We become friends because of photography, giving me the chance to be on sets with people like Millie Bobby Brown, or to go to amazing companies and try out the slide at Google, or go to Facebook and interact with the team there. Or this last year, spoke at Adobe, had to include this one because Katrine works at Adobe. But also, just what an honor and privilege to do these things and to see life above water, to see it below, to see it up close, to really see someone who's devoted their life to what they do, to connecting with these people in so many unique and different ways. And again, for me, this is just sort of my way to go through how photography has enriched my life, and that these images, they're almost like these little journal entries that remind me of these experiences I just wouldn't have had if I didn't have a camera. Like, again, another friend, Peter, he and I are friends because of photography. I've made connections with so many different people because of photography, whether it's yoga teachers or actors or photographers, that one in New York, baseball players, artists, connecting with my own family, my mom and daughter here, strangers. And it's really been this huge gift to me. And I'm so grateful for that. This time of year, I think in particular, it's helpful to just pause, savor, and remember that yes, photography is hard. Yes, there's all the technical side to it, but it's also this thing that gives us this gift of experience, which at least for me, couldn't have had really any other way. And this is getting to the very end of my slides here. So that is what this whole joy of the journey thing is about. And now I'll pivot to you, Katrine, and I want to start off just with a question. And with this image, I'm also curious the story behind the image. But then my question for you, and I'll stop sharing here in a second, is why photography? Why have you put so much time, energy, and effort into this craft? And I've realized I've never asked you that. And so I am curious.
Okay. Um, it's a good question. It's one that I think about quite often. And for me, it's actually a rather simple answer.
Yeah.
I see the world more clearly when I'm looking through a viewfinder.
Hmm.
I love focus. Um, the camera gives me permission to explore, experiment, connect. And in a way, the camera makes me braver.
Hmm.
Like I'm actually rather shy. I don't think I
Yes.
could just walk up to somebody like, "Oh, you look great. I just wanted to tell you that." That would be a little creepy.
Yes. Yes.
Right? But with a camera, and I didn't include any of those pictures that I've been doing lately, and you're a great inspiration for it, is like finding those moments. I was in New York City a few weeks ago, and just walking up to people, in good situations, and
Yeah.
then also directing them a little bit. I
Yes.
am not like a good street photographer. I shall stand here and no one will notice me, and I shall wait.
Yes.
I'm just, maybe too much caffeine. But that engagement, and people like being recognized. They like being seen. And that's what we do. We see people
Hmm.
with respect, with empathy, with like excitement. It lets me do. And it lets me do it across cultures. I mean,
Hmm.
I was very lucky to be in Egypt in March of this year. I can't speak the language, but the eye contact, the smile, a small camera, I'm not showing up with like really giant equipment.
Yeah.
People understand. And they literally want you to be successful.
Hmm.
So there's a giving
Yes.
from the other person.
Yes. Yes.
So it is really a spark of joy.
Hmm.
And that's what the camera lets me share with people.
I love that. Spark of joy. And let me weave in too. You and I are also educators, and you taught for years and years, and now you're in a new role with education. But back to the role when you were kind of in the classroom and working with students, um, what were some of the qualities that you saw with them that led students to being a successful photographer versus students maybe not. Um, because I think there's the spark of joy. We all can kind of share that, but then I see sometimes the spark fizzles out, right? And sometimes it turns into a bonfire. I'm curious on
Yeah.
all your experience over these years, if you've noticed any patterns.
And I have, and it's hard for students. I'm talking about like now, let's say in their 20s.
Yeah.
There seems to be so much. I hear it over and over again, like, I have to find my style.
Mm,
I want a style because you look at Instagram, you can tell like, oh, that's so-and-so's picture,
yeah.
their style. And I'm like, whoa, 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 time out.
Yeah.
What do you care about? What are you interested in?
Mm,
And so many people think, oh, well, that's not important. I really like dogs.
okay.
Great. You should be
Yes.
photographing that. And then it's so important for people to be, well, true to themselves, which is hard, in your 20s.
Yeah.
You're hearing a lot. But the idea of being authentic, if you think it's important, if you care about something,
Mm.
you will see it uniquely and just, photograph that. And then the second piece of advice, you don't need to share everything you photographed. you know, let
Yeah.
it simmer a little bit. But
Okay.
it's hard. I mean, as you mentioned, it is hard, to be successful.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's not an easy thing. It's easy to have the spark, so to speak, I think, to be excited, but it's another thing, another kind of energy to convert that into being productive. Like even back to those Sony events, and I have archives of images I realized of you getting out in there and like I don't know if you remember this one, but there's this it's by water's edge. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but um and I just feel like a lot of people, myself included, are just kind of waiting and watching, which is a skill. But with
Yep.
people, if you really want to craft something, you got to have the spark of the interest. Like maybe I'm just trying to articulate it, but maybe it's like we all like to people watch. Like let's say that woman in a fashion dress and a helicopter. That's like fun to watch. I mean, it's like interesting. But there's a
Yep.
different skill that's required to craft a beautiful photograph, which is above and beyond just watching. Watching isn't enough. I mean, you could do that kind of work, but to your point, like, and I imagine when you travel, like you see all this amazing stuff in Egypt or wherever, but it's not enough just to see it. You have to somehow get involved in it. So, what is the get involved side of it for you? Tell me a little bit about that.
For me, it's always about the story. So when you
Yeah.
see me walking up to, let's say, models,
Yeah.
I like say like imagine this, how do you feel? And then I tell like a little story, and you could see people sort of like
Mm,
acting it out.
got it.
And I always think it's like if you just like have your photo taken like without a story, I mean it's
Yeah.
more like a passport photo.
Sure.
So yeah, there's big planes going up. So, but I
Yeah.
think the story, the motivation, really really helps.
Mm,
I mean, I think it does.
yeah.
Some people might think it's silly,
Yeah.
but and a lot of those situations where we're at Sony, you've got a set of models and there's, 10, 20, 30 people photographing
Right.
them. That is very hard for them. Like
Yeah.
they focus on what do I do?
Right.
So I'm trying to get something to think about besides when do I get to have dinner,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. Because the model is, yeah, it's a little bit of it's very performative. They don't know what they're supposed to do, not supposed to do. They're not getting any feedback. And I think the other
Yep.
thing I like about, the story and getting a chance to kind of practice photography shoulder to shoulder with you is that the other thing about getting involved is it makes the image your own. Because there are a lot of images that
Yeah.
could be captured by anyone. But if you come into it and connect with it and do something, then it's yours. It's not everyone's. And I think that's another thing that helps, at least that I've seen with students, is ownership of the moment, of the situation, and really like I don't know, engaging in it in a deep and real way. Because otherwise you just have the same shot
Well,
all the other people
yeah,
got.
but it's something that you know much more about. It's about being present. Like
Mhm.
you have the shortest moment of time to connect with somebody.
Yeah.
So like when I'm in New York and doing street, like portraits,
Yeah.
I'm like, if I can't get it in 3 clicks, it's not working. And
Yeah.
it's my fault.
Yeah.
And I sort of say, thank you, it's great meeting you. And I
Mm.
go away and it was like, all right, Katrine, what was
Mm.
wrong? What didn't
Yeah.
work out? And
Yeah.
like you showed some picture of the unhoused people here in
Yeah.
Tucson. I mean, it's three clicks. I mean,
Yeah.
5 would be a lot because I'm
Right.
also using a flash,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that's sort of, it's got to be like that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And what, with your photography, you have a day job, you have a source of income. So you're not doing photography in the sense of this is my paycheck. Um, why why keep doing it, or what keeps you doing it, if that makes sense? Because I think a lot of people can relate to this, right? I mean, there's the idea that I think a lot of people have. I want to be a pro, and then if I'm paid, then. But the reality is, I think photography is kind of returning to this almost purer form that it was. And let me say this with a grain of salt. Like, no one cares about your photographs anymore. Like they used, like maybe, let me just qualify this. Let's say 30 years ago, you got a really good hot air balloon photo, and everyone would go nuts. They would be like, I've never seen this. And, there's like 6 hot air balloons. And it's like, now we're like, yeah, I've seen that like
Yeah.
400 times. So that's what I mean. No one cares. They don't, I mean, the novelty of images is less. So it's more of a purity of like, let's just do it to do it because this makes us come alive and who we are. So anyway, for you, what keeps you shooting? Because you could set down the camera, you could not photograph when you travel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, but having that camera and getting up early in the morning and walking through the streets, let's say of Cairo, and going
yeah,
to places where like, oh, you really shouldn't go there. I'm like,
yes,
I'm good. Lets me just connect and see the world better.
hmm,
I mean, it's
hmm,
one-on-one. Now,
yes,
I am super lucky. Yes, I work for
yes,
Adobe, and
yes,
we'll be honest, having that income allows me to do photography.
right,
And
right,
I understand how fortunate I am also when I was a teacher. But
yes,
it's if I didn't do photography, it would be sort of like, oh, you're not walking the walk. Like,
yes, yes,
and it's so important to be authentic, and
hmm,
I was talking to somebody earlier and they said, I hate archive mining. Like, here I
huh,
photographed 20 years ago. And I'm
huh,
like, yeah, I only want to really post what I'm working on at the moment,
hmm,
and share that. So that means
yes.
my archives haven't been looked at in a while, even though I know it's valuable to do.
When you do look at a review images from something, let's say a trip, what are you looking for?
Oh, there's a variety of way to look at images
Yeah,
when I am reviewing.
yeah,
you know, uh, of course, essentially basic, of course, is like technically, right? Is the subject in focus? Is the
yes,
exposure
yes,
right? How is the
right,
composition? But then it gets much more interesting. It's like,
yeah,
all right, there's a subject in the photograph, but is it more than a recording of that scene? More than
yes,
a,
yes,
and that's
yes,
sort of the, oh, I've seen that many times feeling. I'm sure there's some
yes,
list, the 20 places you should go for Instagram. And I'm like,
yes,
why would I
yes,
go there? Everybody else has done that. So you have the technical, then you have the subject. Then for
yeah,
me, it's always about the light, that
yeah,
they're telling the story. And
yeah,
then it's really, am I expressing like what I saw, why I thought this was,
mm,
and
yes,
it's really those 3 things. And then what I'd always also like to pull into it, I don't really like doing what's called a one-off. Okay, here's your one great photo.
ah,
I would really, it's classic photography to work in series or
yes,
bodies of work.
yes,
Because I love the sequencing of,
mm,
so you might start a project with like 1 or 2 pictures, and that's
mm,
good to do. Like, oh, this has legs. This will keep going. I'm going to keep going. And of
yes,
course, the project is going to change as you work on it.
Yeah.
And maybe those early pictures won't be included, but they led you there. They taught you there.
Huh.
And that's what's so great about photography. It is a great art form to be repetitive, which does
Mm.
not mean boring, does not
Yeah.
mean formula, but it means try again, look again,
Mm.
hone your skill, hone the composition,
Right.
understand the story. And
Right. Right. Right.
you can become more and more refined as you do that
Yes.
process.
Yes. Yes. The word I like to think of is iterative. I
Mhm.
remember when I was an intern at the Walt Disney Company, and I back then it was more Wild West. I could just walk into the animation area. I was not part of that, but and talk to the animators who were drawing. There were, at the time, there were people doing traditional drawing, and they would iterate on a character. They would take a character and draw it like 50 times, trying to really figure out the personality of the character, and how it moved, and how, and it was pretty fun. But anyway, the iteration side of it has always connected with me in photography, repetition's another way. But yeah, it's a lot of what we do is we're like, let me try this, let me try that. What about this? What about that? And the cool
Yeah.
thing with that, and is it brings up this idea of just never stop learning. I mean, the photography, back to the why, it sounds like getting up early and getting out there into the world, you're learning, you're like absorbing, you're like, and you almost, I've never seen this in this way. And to your point on light and what's happening. So it's kind of a funny craft, because a lot of times people use the word mastery with craft. And so maybe the question for you, is there such thing as mastery in photography? And again, I'm just playing with questions.
I understand. I'll
Yeah.
just say, first of all, I can't stand that term. It has a
Okay.
whole history of like it's yay. I
Okay.
would use a different term. I would call it understanding. Understanding like how a camera sees. It took
Yeah.
me 30 years to figure that one out.
Okay. Yes.
I just,
Yes.
which is sort of a long time,
Yeah.
but I love how cameras see.
Mm.
Like good optics, what they do with light, that is just
Yes.
amazing. And we have this
Yes.
tool like freeze time, flow with
Yeah.
time. I can
Yeah.
show, how the camera is like with depth of field, the framing.
Yes.
I mean, that I think is just really amazing. So understanding that,
Yeah.
because we've all been in those situations where you're like, oh, I should really change the setting. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I have to go to the menu. I'll never get out, and the person will be gone.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Yes. So
being
having that
comfortable with your
understanding.
tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why most of the time I'm still shooting on manual because
Yeah.
I understand the three things, you know,
Yes. Yes.
um, I'm,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
comfortable there
Wait, talk
because
to me
I
about,
get to make the decision.
yes. And talk to me about the decision to bring a small camera sometimes on your travels. It seems like I'm making this up, but always imagine when you're in India, or when you're, in these places where you're carrying your gear and you need to be nimble, you're traveling with a A7C or something like that, one of the smaller ones. Is that
Right, the
true?
A7C. Yeah, the
Yeah.
A7CR. It's right
Yeah.
over there.
Okay.
And also, I with that camera, I have two prime lenses, personally the 24 and the 55.
Okay.
And I don't use a shoulder strap. It's
Okay.
just a wrist strap. So
Okay.
like you, the camera's just on my, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
you don't
Yes.
see fun. I don't wear a photo vest. I'm not branded with anything.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't have a backpack on.
Yeah.
It's like I have this little fanny pack. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
tiny. And so I'm just there with the camera. Um, just ready. And I'm going out, like I'm not carrying a coffee. You can't have something else in your hand when you want to be taking pictures.
Mm,
I'm always aware of the environment, but
right.
yeah, I'm not going to show up with, and yes, we have the big cameras with the big lenses.
Hmm.
They're very intimidating.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
pointing that in someone's face. You're like, whoa, I also don't want to be the person showing up with, in certain situations, with multiple years of income just in my hands. I think
Right.
it's
Right. Right. Right.
really,
Yes. Yeah.
and we're very fortunate. And with that A7CR, it's like it's a 60 megabyte file. It's amazing. With put a
Yes.
good lens on the camera, I
Yeah.
love it.
It's
for
like all,
street.
yeah, yeah,
It's all you need.
yeah.
And I rarely change lenses when I'm out on the street.
Okay.
Um, so I sort of make a decision, what am I going to be doing? Back to Sony, the 24 I have on it, I've
Yeah,
done amazing portraits with that lens
yeah,
because there's like no distortion.
yeah, yeah.
And what that lens makes me do is makes me get close. And
Mm,
you're in that situation, you know, I'm like 2, 3 feet away from that person. And
yeah.
that's important. And then
Wait,
usually they
this is
invite
the
me to
G
home.
Master lens, or is this a smaller one?
It's the smaller one. I'd have to
Okay.
go
Okay, okay.
go get it.
That sounds very
No,
appealing to me to try. That's why I'm asking.
yeah, I'll get you that. And it's
Yeah.
just so small and light. And the battery lasts forever.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it's like I don't even need to carry an extra battery. With that camera,
Right.
it just lasts. It's great. And
Yes.
then
Yes.
what I love doing, if I have to switch into video, do a quick switch and they look so good.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
I'm a little behind the time, just starting to figure out like this would be better with motion versus stills.
Mm. Yes. Yes.
And I love also starting to be able to see like that also.
Yeah. Yeah. And the storytelling is so different, obviously. And I feel like with motion, at least it's like interesting when the camera moves. Um, and so there's more like physical movement when I'm filming
Yep.
than I'm much more still when I'm doing still photography. So that's kind of an interesting combo. Do you find that as well, or how is it working for you?
It's interesting. Like, do I let the scene move through the frame or do I
Yeah,
move through the,
right, right.
it's a very different, they're a very different thought process.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And also like how much video do I capture? I find like, because I'm a, number of years into it, but I used to capture a lot and now I'm very intentional because I don't want to deal with it, all the footage. So and filmmakers always tell you that plan it out and have your storyboard and all that. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to need 3 seconds of this. I'm just going to shoot 3 seconds of it. Fine. Like done, like where I feel like with stills, it's a little bit more safety net, a little more iteration, and I'll iterate with video, but it is a unique combo.
yeah,
And then I was asking about the lens too, because I find with the smaller camera bodies, having a smaller, lighter lens works so much better. Like I put my big G Master lenses on them, and I feel like it's just kind of awkward or something. Do you find that too,
yeah,
or no? Yeah,
yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the G-Max ones are well balanced, but I don't need that amount of weight,
Hmm.
in my hands walking. I mean, because
Right, right.
I've had a lot of big, heavy lenses, and I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, I'm really tired after half an hour. It doesn't
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
keeping the equipment in the hotel room is not why we bring it.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes. That is so true. That is so true. And then as you've like branched off, maybe tell us a little bit about your role at Adobe. But the question was going to be after you tell us, you branched off and you've gotten to work with photographers from all over the world. How has that changed or expanded your own experience of photography? I guess kind of I imagine from through your position, the broadening effect. You're no longer, let's say, working with students in New York or working with
right,
Sony artisans. It's like whew, all the wide open. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how has that shaped it?
right. So, my title, which I invented, I
Yes, I
am
love
the
it.
Lightroom manager for learning and inspiration.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
um, and so I'm working on adding more learn content into Lightroom because
The
we
app itself. Yeah.
understand like yeah, going out to YouTube and typing in Lightroom, there's a lot of content, a lot of it's outdated,
Yeah.
and a lot of it isn't. I say Lightroom, I'm talking about Lightroom Desktop, the one that used to be primarily cloud-based versus
Yes.
Lightroom Classic.
Yes. Yes.
So it's always important to like sort of define that. I also help work in a Lightroom community, both also
Hmm.
in the mobile and desktop app, where people can see how people have processed their images. You can remix a file,
Yeah.
to practice your editing skills. You can download presets. It's all about the sharing,
Yeah.
which is really exciting. And so, yeah, if I see someone posting consistently good work,
Yeah.
I will email them or find them on Instagram, go, oh, my name's Katrine. I work for the Lightroom
Yes.
team. I really like your work. And
Yeah.
here's someone falling off their chair, France,
Yes.
like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, someone from Adobe recognized me. But it's like, yeah, you're doing good work.
Hmm.
And work always rises to the top.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's important. So and I do a lot of work with the marketing team, also with the community, at events,
Yeah.
because I'm not shy and I
Yeah.
love this stuff.
Yes. Yes. And
So
how is that? I'm going to just say more of a global
it is,
perspective of photography. Um,
oh, right, right, right.
how is that?
So important to see how people from their countries, their experiences, their regions are photographing. Okay,
Yeah.
versus, oh, let's send a New York photographer to name a
Hmm.
country,
Right. Right.
in a different continent.
Yeah.
Those pictures would be completely very, very different. So I
Right.
always do
Right.
want to, I want to see what's important to people in where they live.
Hmm.
All right. That's always eye-opening,
Yes.
to see those values, see that point of view, to see that light, to see that environment. I mean, and that's the beauty now of photography, how easily we can share
Yes.
and connect. I mean, I've connected with people all over the world because of this.
What are you
So
finding are the
that's,
reasons globally make why we make photographs?
I think what people are looking for ways to express themselves and to, in a way, say, I am here.
Hmm.
Because it's always this moment in their day or their experience of, I'm here. I found
Hmm.
this X, whatever the photograph. I think
Yeah.
this is important. And it's like,
Yes.
okay. And if you
Yes.
think that's important, then I should probably pay attention to it.
Yes. Yes.
And because we don't, I mean, I don't photograph things that I'm not interested or that bore me.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, here's your dirty laundry. Ugh.
Right. Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that's interesting about photography. My husband, John, is also a photographer,
Hmm.
and we go to a lot of the same places,
Right.
and it's so easy to see whose picture's who, because
Yes.
he
Yes.
sees the same place completely differently. And it's
Yes.
always like, so well, I'll say, John, your picture's right here. And then
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
find my own.
Yeah.
But I like, on that note, I love photographing with other photographers,
Yes. Yeah.
on photo walk, these
Yes.
events. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to work by myself. Are you kidding me? I can learn
Yeah.
from every single person that, like, I'm like,
Yes.
I didn't even see that.
Yes. 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 I love that. It made me think of I was recently in Switzerland and my daughter Annie, my oldest daughter, joined me, which was really fun. And near the end of one of the days, we're like, let's share our photos with each other. And so she shared, just our iPhone photos, kind of airdropping each other what we did. And same kind of thing, like you could see so clearly which ones were mine and which ones were hers. And mine were to a fault, like very well composed. And hers were these like beautiful slices of life, like just moments and things that were happening. And it was like nothing was quote well composed. And what I mean by that, she never said like, hey, stand here and lean against the door
Right.
in this way. And so for me, it was so refreshing. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and it was kind of convicting. It kind of made me realize like I've forgotten how to shoot like that.
Hmm.
And to really like be these like in the moment, like as it's unfolding kind of things. And anyway, it's fun to see that and to learn from it. I guess I was just kind of making that principle my own for a moment.
Yeah.
And then maybe back to the listener, back to the question of like, how do you succeed? How do you keep the spark alive? And that's why I was asking you a little bit about globally, why are we taking pictures? It's like, I am here. This matters. This is how I'm seeing the world. It's like, what I hear in that statement is the more individualistic you can be about your photography, the bigger the reach, meaning be true to yourself. Don't try to like do some concept that other people do, but no, like you like dogs, like you said earlier, work with dogs. Or my daughter, it was interesting. She would really like certain colors. And so she would just
Yeah.
photograph these colors. And I was like, I haven't done that since like I was in a workshop where it's like, go photograph 5 things that are blue, you
Yep.
know? Um, and so it almost like reminded me what I forgot. But anyway, the point I think is just like the more we can be who we are, true to who we are, and find out what ignites our fire, do that, but then also always learning. All like you said, you and your husband, photographing with him, seeing how he sees the world and how you see the world. And that then helps us, I even think it helps us find our own style because we realize there's some pictures that other people take I don't like when I go photographing with them. And I just think they missed it, and they think the same thing about me. Um, so it's a great way to grow.
Yep. On that note, I mean, if you say, I find this interesting, you photograph it, that can be a very personal statement.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are scared or intimidated to
Hmm.
be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think being vulnerable and you have to keep being vulnerable,
Hmm.
to make mistakes,
Right.
learn, but to also be honest. Like if you're
Yeah.
Mr. Know-it-all, I mean, that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
stay curious, be vulnerable. It's hard, it's personal, but the personal work is the best work.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I like that. I think, and maybe in looking at my photos, yeah, I mean, vulnerability is an interesting word. Like, I think if someone were to look at them, they would say, "Good job, Chris." And I would say, "Thank you." But they wouldn't feel a sense of vulnerability or they weren't as exploratory, or um, uncertain. There's a little less certainty. And I guess maybe thinking of some of those photos I shared of yours, there's a lot of uncertainty in all those photos. The reflection one, all these, you're kind of like, what's going on? What isn't? Even the unhoused people one, I'm kind of like, what is this? I hadn't seen those yet.
Yep.
Um, so it seems like, and I'm just kind of trying to connect the dots here a little bit with what you're saying, but part of being vulnerable is allowing there to be uncertainty, not necessarily create an image where it's like complete, where it's like, this is the image and this is all you get. It's kind of like, yeah, this is the image and this is how I feel or something, or this is what I'm going through. Is that fair to say?
It is. And that's a constant process because of course we're we're growing, we're changing, we're evolving, we're going up and down. There's quieter moments, depressed time,
Yes.
high energy, distracted times. Um, and in a way, the camera always lets me just like, okay, I need to take a moment.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I want to see this
Yes.
again more clearly. And a lot of my pictures are like definitely they're not even in focus,
Okay. Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
shallow field. But
Yeah.
I love that beauty. It's okay to take beautiful pictures. Everybody thinks they have to like,
Mm,
I need to win a Pulitzer. This
mm,
is really beautiful. And it's like,
mm,
yeah, that's nice. Good. Do it.
mm.
It's all
Yeah.
right. People put so much pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
And that's going to help anybody.
Yeah. That pressure stifles. It can stifle. And I see you do that when I've watched you photograph. You take all the pictures. You like go back, you get up close, you do the thing, and you have no pretension like, oh, I wouldn't take that picture. And I think that's freeing. And and I've commented this before, but I think the people around you when you're photographing, it's contagious a little bit too, because they're like, oh,
Yep.
well, maybe I can do that too. I could just walk up or go high or low or whatever.
Exactly.
It's a helpful thing. And then at this point, it might be fun to invite Derek back in. Derek, I don't know if you can hear us, but it's always fun to add another voice into our conversation. So if you want to join in, feel free. Yeah, look at that on the fly.
On the fly.
And Derek, I'm curious to hear if you have any reflections or questions based on the conversation.
It's always nice to hear such a talented photographer has gone through the same thing that you go through millions of times when you
Mm,
stop and have a moment on the street and you look down and you're like, ah, what's wrong with me? Like, I didn't get it. Like, I took a
mm,
couple photos. I just couldn't find but it was so much more of a forgiving way. Like, hearing Katrine
mm,
talk about it, then it's like we beat ourselves up and we expect because we're professionals that
mm,
we're going to always hit the mark. And even when it's on the street, on the fly, you don't know what's coming at. And sometimes it's okay to just be like, you know what? Okay, maybe they'll like the image, but for me, it's like something was missing.
mm,
And then on the flip side, what Katrine was just saying about, yes, it's okay to just take a beautiful photo, and not everything has to be this, award-winning photo. But not everything has to be a magazine cover shot, or not everything has to have this deeper meaning. It's okay to just see something and say, you know what? I like this scene. It makes me feel good. I want to just take a pretty picture and have it there. So those two kind of
love that.
different things, they kind of, there's like a little tension between them, but they also work so well together. They're woven so well. And I think that's the fabric of what photography is. And it's all dictated by where we are, which is kind of the whole point of this Joy of the
Mm,
Journey series, and
mm,
how closely photography is tied to us as people. And if I'm confident in my work, then okay, then I'm completely okay with taking an image that is just going to be for me. And if I'm okay, with taking an okay photo on the street, but if it's about that moment and realizing that, okay, well, what can I do better? How do I take that, and what did I miss? Why don't I like this? Why don't I feel something when I look at this?
mm.
So I kind of just went off on a little self-reflection there, but it's
Yeah, I
nice
love
to
it.
see that, we all are kind of in the same boat, And another thing Katrine said, you don't have to show everybody every single image. And I
Right.
Oh
think
God,
that's
no.
one
Please
one
don't.
one yeah, one of the things, it's like, look, photographers, the way one of my first mentors described a professional photographer as, he said, the basic difference between an amateur and a professional is an amateur can go out and take a good photo, but a professional knows they're going to go out and take a good photo. It's that intent. It's that
Mm,
Yep.
nothing is going to get in my way. We're professional problem solvers. We look at what we have, we find ways to connect with people, we work with what we have. And there's just this beauty to the process, but that always looking at our work and say, well, how can I make this better? Why don't I feel this?
mm,
So there's my random summary of what I've been listening to and how I've kind of reflected
mm,
on it in my own work.
mm. I thought you were going to
Uh,
also
um,
mention. Oh, go ahead. I thought you
All
were
right.
going to also
oh,
mention when she talked about getting lost in the menu. When you're
That
talking about relatable, there's so many times where I'm like, I'm going to just fix this real quick, just 1 second, and I'm like, I didn't even, I just like rush.
and
It
it's
looks like it's written in Russian or
yes.
something, I can't even.
You're not even moving through the menu. You're literally staring at it like, what do I do now? What do I
totally.
do now?
Yeah,
Oh,
true confessions.
yeah.
Also, we all have the I have we know this, the voice of, oh, this is stupid. Why are you doing this? It's a waste of time. Nobody's gonna like
Right,
that.
right,
That voice, it's
right.
like I've learned, like, thankfully, like, you are not helping me, to
Yeah,
turn that voice off. And we all have that.
yeah.
Um, but I want to jump back to that first image you showed with the puddle and the Empire
Yes.
State.
Yeah, yeah,
I was, I, that's behind Madison Square Garden, seeing the Empire State
yeah,
Building. I walked by it
yeah,
hundreds of times. One day that puddle was there, and
yeah.
I walked by again dozens of times, hoping that the puddle would be there. No, you have got to get it at that moment. There's no going back in photography. I
Mm,
mean, I had that one chance,
mm,
and it's also me, New York. I don't care if it's dirty, I'm going to take the picture. But that's the thing. It's like, don't listen to that doubting voice. Don't say, oh, I'll come back tomorrow. It never works. And when I'm driving with John, it's always great. It's like, if one of us says stop the car, it might take us half a day to drive 5 miles, you know? Oh, we'll come back later. Nope, that
Yeah.
building will be gone.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
you have to
That's,
be,
I love
be,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, you got it. And I'm just going to add to that too. I've done things where I've photographed the same person twice, and it's different than a puddle, but like I'm like, well, this was great last time, and then sometimes I'm like, well, I'll kind of do something similar, and it doesn't work at all. So even like the person is in a different state. Like one time, this one guy, he kind of had more of this youthful, raw energy, and then he got a little bit older and jaded. And so I was like, oh, like that's gone,
Um,
and so I think just maybe adding to that, it's like puddles and people. You gotta like take the moment. It's like this is it. You gotta go for it. I love that. And quiet that voice. I mean, that voice is so loud. And maybe that's what I saw in my daughter's photos. There was no voice. And back to your comment on beautiful picture, she just would like something, she would take a picture. And I was just kind of like almost like, can you do that? And she was just like, she just did it all day long.
It's like we put up too many walls as photographers.
Yes,
Sometimes it's almost
yes,
like the ignorance of children. Children do stuff
yes,
freely, and adults think about stuff
right.
almost to a fault. And yeah, I think it pays to be. You look at some of the adults that are happier, the adults that are still in touch with that kid side, where they're like, you know what,
Yes,
no, screw it, I'm gonna have fun.
yes,
yep.
yes. And then what I hear too from what you were saying is like, um, we don't have to take photography that seriously, like the beautiful picture thing. It's funny how like even for me, like when I create talks, I'm like they want them to be so good and the image and the seat, everything. And at the end of the day, I love how you just said there's something beautiful, photograph it. Like, and
Yep.
it doesn't necessarily need to have like a utilitarian purpose either for someone else or for yourself of like feeling like I'm great because I did this great thing. You can just let something be what it is, and that's refreshing. That's a refreshing reminder. I think this time of year too, because we're coming up to New Year's resolutions and goals and accomplishing and conquering the world and all that kind of stuff. It's a helpful segue into that to lighten up a little bit and to enjoy the process. And even like if that means smaller camera, smaller lens, or if it means a mindset. Um,
Yep. Because
Katrine, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, like on that note of take the beautiful picture, because every picture you take teaches you for the next one.
Mm,
Mm,
And there might be something in there like, oh, I really liked how the light, the color, da, 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 da. And I can
yeah.
apply to the next one, the next one, next. And that's what's great about digital. I mean, I really try not to look at the pictures, the chimping thing,
Yeah.
because you miss what's going on. And that's, I don't know if you ever, like, for some reason, traveling or illness, like you haven't photographed in like a week or two
Yeah.
or a month. I always start where I was. I can't skip that month, and so that's why you want to learn from your own images too. And then one
Mm,
last thing.
yeah.
Um, it's not just because I work for Adobe. I literally see Lightroom in the viewfinder. I
Mm,
have a special camera. No, but
yeah.
I know what I'm gonna be doing. I
Yes.
mean, how I see it. That the image editing is part of my process. And
Right.
I love thinking about editing. Like we drove 2,000 miles. So, I mean, I didn't just think about Lightroom all the time, but thinking
Yeah.
about what I can do. And that night, I'm like, oh, I have to try this. It worked out. It's on
Yes.
Instagram. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so it's so much fun to have this malleable um, field, photography. And now with digital, that you can try different variations and try different approaches, from the photography, from the lighting to the editing, with ease.
Yes.
Once again, learn from it. Please don't show me every variation you did. Let it sit, let it
Yeah.
simmer. It'll taste better.
I love that. Um, it's so good. It's so good. I too, I so resonate with, I create photographs with post-production in mind, 1,000%. So I love all this backlight stuff. And whenever I have workshops, my students are always like, well, where's your reflector? Or where's your fill light? And I'm like, I always tell them, I know what exposure I need to nail because I know exactly how I can move modify that image in post, I know the colors, I know the shadows, I know everything. And so it's really confusing to them, but then we do it. And then the other thing I was going to say is it's also a reason why I don't show my subjects the back of my camera. And I kind of have this rule, which I know photographers differ from, but because, for example, if I have, let's say, open shade, it's very even, undramatic light. And I've heard other photographers call it boring light. And I think it's magical light, but it's because I know the contrast I'm going to add in. I know exactly what I'm going to do with that because I've done that so many times. I'm mostly focused on the eyes. I'm thinking, do I want this slightly high key, just a little bit overexposed? But if I show someone on the back of the camera, they're going to be like, really? But then if I were to show them the image after Lightroom, they would be mind blown. They're like, how did you do this? And so I think, yes, and I guess I just want to keep echoing that. Like a lot of people disconnect those two and they'll even have maybe a negative term for post-production. Like I have one colleague who's like, he calls it butt time because he's sitting in a chair. He's like, oh, I just have to go spend butt time, and I'm like, no, like it's art. Like this is the whole thing. And the moment we sever the process from those, in today's modern era of photography with raw capture and dynamic range and all the kind of stuff, it's like we lose a lot. So anyway, I love that you said that, and I'm a huge, huge believer in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of like I can go to the store and I can buy the potatoes and all this stuff, like the raw ingredients, but I
Yes.
still need to cook it.
Yeah,
And I don't
cook it with intention and thoughtfulness and even like
Yeah.
even like I love the idea, chocolate chip cookies from the grocery store, same recipe made by your mom. Which cookie's better? Your mom's. It's like magic, like because she invested love in the cookie or something. But I think it's true. I think what the energy we invest shows up in that process, and I definitely extend that to Lightroom, Photoshop, and post-production. Having a mindset that has an intention and thoughtfulness versus let me just, I know I'm kind of on a rant here, but I'm so excited about it. But it's like sometimes people let the tool determine the image because Lightroom's powerful. Like you said, there's all these like presets now and all this, and you can buy, all this stuff. And I'm like, yes, it's powerful, but all the more reason you have to bring your own intention to it. Otherwise, your voice, your own individuality of your image is going to get washed out. And so really making sure we're bringing ourselves to that moment it's kind of awesome. And when it happens, it's so exciting. Like, at least for me, I don't know, when I get an image somewhere, I'm like, yes, I feel a sense of victory. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it came to life. Like your cooking analogy, it's like you're pulling it out of the oven and it's the smell, and you're just like with the cooking idea, you're like, yes, this worked,
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like, yes, I would want my friends to eat this, or
Yes.
no.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes. Yes. Versus did I do that, or did like the machine kind of do that for me? I mean, because like it's powerful what the machine can do, right? I mean, there's a lot of smarts in there, letting it do that, but then adding your own intention. So anyway, but we're near the end. So Katrine, I want to give you a chance to share anything else that's coming up for you, advice to photographers, thoughts and reflections on something we talked about, or something you didn't get to talk about that you would love to, kind of in this idea of encouraging other people to embrace the joy of this incredible craft and art and science of photography. And there's no pressure here. If you don't have anything, that's fine too. But I just wanted to give you that.
I'm glad the question was that long because I got to give it a very classic answer.
Yes.
Please go see photography in person in a gallery or a museum. It does not only exist on a little screen. And look at historical black and white prints, like silver gelatin. It's amazing. You'll also see that their lenses weren't that good and a lot of things aren't really sharp. It's okay. Our reality in photography now is like really sharp. But I think going to galleries and museums, photo books, sounds weird, in 3 dimensions is so important.
Why?
And it can be deeply resonant mean, it's because it's you and that image and the experience that the curator has made. And once again, it's usually a body of work. It's a series, it's a sequence. So I can't underestimate how important that is. I mean, it might be when you're traveling, when you're in New York, for example, I was at the, I saw the Robert Frank exhibit. I mean, he's so much more than the Americans. It was fabulous. So, it's classic advice, but it's so true. And it's advice that I often forget until I walk into a gallery. I'm like, oh yeah, this is really real. This is great. It makes such a difference. So that's my advice.
Love it. Beautiful closing words for us and kind of an action step. Get out there, museum, books, print. And the other thing I'm hearing you say is like have an experience with imagery that's different than on the screen.
Yes.
And let that inform you somehow.
Exactly.
Love it. Chris, Katrine, this was a good one. This was a fitting end to this series. I think this tied it up perfectly. You picked the perfect person to close this one out, Chris.
Yes. Thank you, Katrine.
This was great. Yes,
Oh, thank
Katrine.
you. Thank you.
Huge thank you.
And B&H, thank you.
Yes. And Sony,
Pleasure.
thank
And
you.
Sony for hosting it. Of course, of
Oh, yeah.
course. And
Great
Chris will be
support of the
back.
community.
We got one more with you, Chris. We're
Yes.
ending this year right, starting the new year right. With on the 23rd, we're gonna have Chris back for Reflect, Recharge, and Reignite your photography. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you didn't catch up to the rest of this series, Chris had some wonderful, wonderful guests on. So make sure you check those other episodes out. And that is it. That's all we got for you for now. Another edition of the B&H Event Space in the books. Catch y'all next time.
All right.